Day 4. There was a fear deep within her, one that she knew all too well. It was in her instincts, even with a peerless resolve, it wouldn't save her. Nobody was going to save her. She knew that it was a dream, yet knowing never kept the truth away. Her mind was flooded with water, too deep to see the light. Her muscles ached, but she couldn't move. The water kept adding weight to her pelt. Even if it was a dream, the suffocating dread of drowning in this dark water still triggers her urge for life. "Someone, please save me." The white rabbit called for help, as loud as she could think of. It was a dream. She shouldn't be scared of fiction. Yet what she feared most in these dark and thick waters was the eerie quietness that surrounded her. "Please, Lord of Order, please can someone help me?" she screamed out, only for her brain to feel her urgency, her mouth failing. It's natural for her kind to fear it. Being centilope or human didn't dictate the looming dread. It was a fact from her birth that the outcome would be the same. Little lucky rabbit. "No, I'm not lucky. I'm far from lucky." She denied what she heard those sentients who dared to say those words. The white rabbit's foot being the lucky trinket that many seek. But what about the body and mind? She drowned as the water filled her lungs, yet something was missing. She looks down to see her feet were missing, preventing her from swimming upward to freedom. "Mama, Daddy, I'm sorry." Where was this luck that she was supposed to have as she drowns deeper into this unknown abyss? She wondered if her parents still loved her, being such a failure of a daughter. A mistake from birth. Even if she lived in a well-off household, she was still a failure compared to them. "Judas, Monica, please help me." She grabs onto her older siblings' legs, ones that are as lucky as hers. Yet when she touches their legs, her hands are burned like touching an open flame kindled by 1,000 pieces of coal. She screams as the coals start to float down. At least she doesn't feel alone anymore. At least something was happening. The water felt warm from the abundance of coal drifting to the abyss, the same as her. Wait, it's getting hot. The water starts to burn her skin, burn her pelt like she was in a pot of boiling stew. Her brain knew how loud she wanted to scream, but who would be there if she did? A hand reached out to her, slim yet oddly masculine, pulling her up. Once she saw the silhouette of her knight. Her heart dropped as he smiled devilishly. He pulled her hard, but the boiling water didn't want to release her, making her joints pop. She didn't want the knight's aid anymore, thrashing to get loose from the bastard's grip. Yet a looming figure came for him. A white shadow chomps his whole body, and with her hands. She floats down the abyss once more, lacking arms or legs like a crochet doll that children play with. She closes her eyes, only to feel her stumps plop on the floor. She heard herself breathing, which made her open her eyes once more, only seeing bodies engulfed in flames. They surrounded her, the disgusting smell of burning flesh and rot. She cries for them, as the land echoes with the cries of a newborn child. Why did she cry for these people, whose faces were burned far from recognition? She fell as she wept, falling into a field of calicochum roses underneath her. The black roses felt warm, alive with a familiar scent. Why did a poisonous flower bring her so much comfort, she wondered. She looks up to see a path through the stacked bodies, finding a black rose that really spoke to her. She crawls as best she could, like a crochet doll, with sentient blood flowing within her. But she couldn't reach the flower, as with every inch she gave it 2 more spaces away. No, please don't leave me. You promised me we would be together forever. She cried out to a name she couldn't remember. What was the name of the black rose again? She couldn't remember. Why did she call out to this single black rose? Why did her heart get destroyed by the flower's absences? Please, please don't leave me alone in this cruel world. Calicocum, Juno said as she woke up alone on Lynn's bed, watching Chili reading a book as she looked at her with worry. Chili seemed to be worried about Juno, but once she woke up, she buried herself in the tome. Juno didn't think anything of the sight until she read the book cover, which made her wake up quickly. The book said 50 pelts darker, which had Juno scream in a high pitch. What are you doing? That book is off limits. Juno jumps out of bed and lunges at her book with extreme prejudice. Chili was naturally stronger than Juno, so a simple palm to her face kept her at bay. She continued to read as the rabid rabbit snarled at the Lyconian, flailing her arms around. Wow, the merchant spent 24 pieces of gold just to spank the farm girl's ass, Chili said with heavy investment, wagging her tail as she dug deeper. Juno froze like a statue as the Lyconian spoiled the book. She backs off, trying to silence her ears, but fails because of how wide her ear canals are. Why did the Lord make her a centerlope? She could hear a bedbug fart, she thought. Please, don't do this to me. Juno covers her ears and falls into Lynn's bed, using the pillow to muffle any noise. Everyone at the bazaar is watching. Chili continued to read the book out loud, obviously to get a rise out of Juno. Juno could only wiggle herself deeper into the bed, screaming as she heard more. You really like this stuff. You really are a perverted bunny. Chili chuckled, finishing her whole game as she felt that she suffered enough. Juno shot her head out to the sky and flushed her knees on the bed. She screams to the heavens while she pulls her ears. She doesn't want her white rabbit ears anymore. During her dramatic display, the door opened with an unamused Lynn and chuckling Ramai carrying trays of food. We just went to go get food. What the hell are you girls doing to her? Lynn flicked her ears with a blank stare, sliding in while balancing trays of breakfast. Juno froze again. This time, she was acting like a character from the Otherworlders novellas. Chili found Lynn's reaction amusing, closing the book with a chuckle. Nothing, only flipped through the new girl's book and started to read a couple of verses. Then she acted all dramatic. Chili passed the book back to Juno with a shark smile, which made a vein pop out of Juno's head. She cradled the tome within her breast, yet failed to hide the title from the other women. Lynn reads the cover, only lifting up her eyebrow with a hint of judgment. Hey, I like the story, okay. Juno tried to defend her stance, while she dropped her ears in shame. Ramai passed by Lynn with a tray as well, sliding by Chali's bedside. The contents had 2 servings of eggs, bread, and bacon, sizzling fresh from the pan with some fragrant citrus fruit juice, squeezed. She passes Chali a handkerchief from the tray, presenting her with a meal. Don't worry, Juno. Being a pervert is just a centelope thing. Lynn here kept on throwing passes at the barkeep as he was setting up for the night. Ramai narked, which had Lynn react with a squint, yet she just rolled with it with a shrug. A bunny man as handsome as that wouldn't mind being his side piece. He could put a couple of babies in me, Lynn said, as she slid a tray filled with 2 servings of fruit salad, mixed with appealing colors and the sweet smell of juicy cuts. It was paired with a small cup of coffee with enough potency to wiggle a nose. Lynn, do you even know his name? Juno asked with her morality, feeling that the union between 2 parties should be more reserved. Lynn passes her a fork with a bowl, which Juno accepts with a small bow for politeness. Don't need his name when he's fucking this. Lynn pointed to her womanly bits and plopped herself on the end of her bed. Juno was taken back, but the Lyconian and the Panrius only giggled at the uncensored centelope. Lynn reaches for her shot of coffee with no hesitation, gulping down the bitter liquid. She pinches her nose while she thumps the floor in quick succession. Then she passes Juno with the other cup. Juno didn't like how Lynn reacted to the strong coffee, shaking her head with her ears drooped over. Lynn insisted with a gentle shove of the drink, which made Juno groan. She accepts the coffee with reluctance, choosing to do just like she did, 1 gulp. Lynn quickly passes the tray to her so she can place the cup on it as she produces a violent cough. Trust me, a centelope's best friend is the sudden jolt of energy, Lynn said as she placed the tray behind her and continued nibbling her fruit. The dark coffee felt like she had just swallowed a potent poison, her body trying to expel it naturally. Yet, the results were instant. Not being a coffee drinker made her body notice the surge of energy. So Munch, what is the task today? Chali asked as she plopped a strip of bacon into her jaws, savoring the greasy yet rendered fatty cut. Ramai remained silent, for she was truly enjoying the soft and bouncy texture of her eggs, living in her own world. Lynn swallowed her crisp apple, focusing on her bowl, yet answered her with a pass. Your task today is to heal that crater on your leg, while the girls and I go find some calicocum, Lynn said, then slid a berry in her mouth, enjoying the pulp that it produced. Chali swallowed her last stand of bacon, sucking her fingers from the grease like a symphony on a piano. Don't be that way, Lynn, after yesterday's torture. I feel right as rain. Chali tried to prove her point by sliding her leg off the bed, but the pain still lingers. She only inched her leg until she bit her lip, trying to hide her discomfort. Juno looks at her with concern, looking at her wound, then back at her. Lynn chuckled, clearing the citrus fruit from her mouth and swallowing. "If you tip-top, then go meet with more before we do anything," Lynn said with a sinister grin which made the Lyconian sweat. Lynn knew that Chali would try her best to avoid more, especially when she took a risky chance with the Slayer. Chali grumbled, feeling a little petty from the Centilope's jab. "I would, only when you say hi to Sikalai," Chali threw out, making the Centilope squint with malicious intent. Ramai finished her plate, brought back to reality to feel the tension in the air. She waves at them both frantically, gaining the attention of the two. "Come on, you two, no need to fight. Chali, Lynn worries about you like a little sister, so let her coddle you a little. And Lynn, express your feelings more openly." Ramai told both of them, which got an immediate reaction. They both remained speechless, both red like a tomato and bumbling their words. Juno found them rather adorable at the moment, as she continued munching on a delicious crunchy apple. Equals. How's the search? Oh, wise herbalist, Lynn shouted as she crouched in a field filled with mismatching flowers. The surroundings sounded safe, with the natural chirping of birds and the flowing river not so far away. Ramai is standing up comparing two specimens of calicochum, confused and looking for the difference. "Juno, which ones are we supposed to get again?" Ramai asked a crouching Juno who was focusing on a plucked flower. She closes her palm with the black rose, sealing the light while she pokes her eye within the chamber. She remembers from her time at the academy reading about calicochum that the properties of the flower depended on the gender. Epistolate calicochum had poisonous seeds that could irritate an open wound, making Chali's situation far worse. The staminate creates bioluminescent pollen that is filled with a neutralizing agent made for many purposes. So these roses were the only ones that glowed in the dark, but it would seem that someone scavenged the majority. The one in hand wasn't a male, yet she pockets the flower, and it could be used as a natural beast deterrent. They have to glow in your closed hands. If they don't, then they're the poisonous ones, Juno said as an answer to both of them, as she crawled to the next black rose. Lynn seized the one in her hands, letting it fly in the air as it didn't glow. Ramai had a minor freak out, dropping them while she backs away. Juno chuckled from her little squeak, turning her body to her. "It's only poisonous if you crush the seeds and ingest them or apply it to open wounds." Juno reassures Ramai as she breathes a sigh of relief. Lynn flicks another one, audible getting irritated by the lack of the certain ones. The trip was a quiet one, but it still took them 3 hours to find the meadows. Finding the right ones took them about the same amount of time, but they only found a measly 4. Juno didn't know that the males would be so rare, but many tales told the potency of these roses as a healing agent. Then Lynn raised her alarm, flicking her ears from the sounds of activity nearby. Ramai saw her scouting the area, which told her to pull out her bow and ready her quiver. Juno notices the sound of faint footsteps as well, turning to see how the others reacted. Lynn waves at her to continue. Then she taps Ramai's shoulder to keep her cover. Lynn walks in the direction of the footsteps, noticing that they weren't the sound of lurking feet. It might just be another group just nearby, but the footsteps told her that they outnumber the three. Ramai jogs away from Lynn, looking up a sturdy tree that would be a good vantage point. She was an avid climber, scaling the bark with a quick pace, wrapping her legs around a sturdy branch. Lynn traveled deeper into the forest, which had Ramai hop from tree to tree with near silence. Juno was alone now, which she couldn't help from feeling a bit uncertain as she observed them until they were out of sight. She shakes her nerves. They trust her to be doing the finding. It wasn't a guaranteed encounter. She stood up while she scanned the rest of the flower bed, appreciating the vibrant colors. Tulips and daisies, spangles and roses made the land look peaceful, the wind feeling good on her ashen hair. She noticed that the wind pointed towards the hill, with a trail of flowers creeping up. She found it interesting that she did see a familiar black rose on the top, fueling her curiosity. She might find more over the hill, but that would mean that she is making distance from her group. She looked around the large flower bed again, taking mental note that they had already searched the majority. Finding more would be really good for the group, she thought, but trailing out was risky. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she told herself that she wouldn't go far. She takes another scan for the other two, but only hears the whispers from afar. It would seem that Lynn is talking with the group, diplomatically handling the situation. If they can talk it out for now, Juno thought that she would scale the hill. She hopped up with determination, slapping the pollen off her purple robe. Once she reached the top, she was greeted with an amazing view of the nearby pond that connected to a river. It had some wilderness animals taking a sip from the water, deer tribes lining up to savor the water. Then they suddenly flee from the water as a giant tortoise emerges from the middle of the pond, being bigger than a tall oak. Avoid the water, got it? She told herself as she scratched her ear. The bastion tortoise had just woken up from its slumber, but the sheer mass of the creature still tugged on her instincts. She turns her attention to the bottom of the hill, seeing that there were in fact more flowers trailing through. There was a small trail, which she believed would be easy to find if things turned sour. She flicked her ears with glee. From a yard away, she saw some more calicochum colonies. She makes sure that she isn't being hunted by anything, scanning around for any monsters or no-gooders. Her back didn't tingle, so she hops her way up the small trail, having a vague amount of caution. She didn't know where to start, for she reached a whole patch of calicochum that spread in a zigzag pattern. Before she could crouch down and inspect the vast amount, one rose caught her eye. It was a large specimen under a large tree, just a couple of feet away. If it was a male, it should have enough potency and quantity to act as 5. She couldn't help but investigate it, making sure to circle around the flowers to not disturb them. She crouches down to inspect the large flower, closing her hands and seeing if the rose glowed. It did not, which made the Centaulope sigh with veiled anticipation. She slaps her thigh to relieve a bit of her disappointment, which was the action that made the dirt underneath her collapse. She screams as she falls down the hole, falling into a small underground tunnel. She lands perfectly fine, but with a stage of unfortunate events, the large tree feels a bit deeper, sealing the opening with roots. It had a faint amount of light to calm herself, as she saw that she didn't fall far. She flicks her ears with pride, for it wouldn't be a hassle to summon the words of power to make the tree reveal an exit. A Radicibus fiamis, ad solum compactum. Click, click. She stops her spell as she notices that she wasn't alone in the tunnel. Her back twitched at the mechanical sound, knowing that it was a weapon of some sort. The tunnel had a peculiar smell, one that had the lingering scent of wild smoke. She drooped her ears, scared to turn around to see the source of the noise. Turn around slowly. The voice of a man commanded, which was a slight relief that it wasn't anything too monstrous. Yet he wasn't friendly, making her heart race from his stare of daggers. She followed his orders, turning around slowly to see the faint silhouette of a man. The small glimmer of light made his green-scaled armor glow and shine his serpent mask. He pointed a crude pistol at her, wafting the packed gunpowder down the barrel. The lighter string was already lit, ensuring Juno that it was loaded. Looks like a rabbit found herself down the hole with a snake. Interesting, the serpent slayer said with a bit of confusion, tilting his head at the weird coincidence. Why did it have to be him, she thought. Maybe he didn't remember her. They only ran by as he pulled the butcher's aggro. You're one of those beastkin that left that Callisto alpha to me, small world. The slayer said in a flat tone, without anger or humor. Juno started to produce a cold sweat. Why did he have to have a good memory? Mr. Hunter, Slayer, sir. If it's anything of importance, I didn't mean to do that, she said with a shaken voice as she looked down the barrel of the dueling pistol. The slayer squints his green eyes, disturbing Juno from the lack of visible expression. She didn't know if the slayer was overwhelmed with anger or unamused by her plea. It would seem so. The full Centaulope seemed to be the one in charge from the way the group acted. The slayer analyzed, cold and calculating. Juno took his words to mean that he had an idea of her origin. He looked at her sleeves and her legs, then he looked at her breasts. She covers her window with a grumble, seeming to feel like she knows what's coming. Don't flatter yourself, half-born. I just noticed how smooth you are from your neck area, how tall you are. The slayer deflected, while he analyzed her from top to bottom. Juno was relieved from the first male she met by herself not being a pervert, but the tension was real. He kept his finger loose on the side of his trigger. Just one motion would be required. I don't want to patronize you, Mr. Slayer, but are you going to kill me? Juno asked, while she slightly walked backwards. The slayer looked dead in the eye and wiggled his finger side to side. Juno didn't understand what he was trying to say. Not to move, or he wouldn't kill her. Don't know. How many friends do you have around? The slayer said with a swirl from his gun. She felt like the slayer was testing her as he looked deep into her eyes. If she told him that she was alone, would he pull the trigger? But if he pulled the trigger when she did have friends around, then it would echo. I came over here with 2 sentients. They went to investigate a third party not far from here. Juno told the truth. He couldn't make a noise if they were near. He didn't pull the trigger, so Juno assumed that she had chosen the right course. Is there a full centelope and Lyconian with you? The slayer asked, which made Juno flinch from the mention of Lynn. He notices her hiccup, squinting his eyes while he waits for an answer. She couldn't lie now, but they didn't come with Chali, who she assumed had a violent encounter with. Lynn didn't openly try to kill him, so she thought telling the truth would still be the better option. I'm with a centelope and a half-born Panrius. Juno confirmed, which had the slayer visibly lower his guard by relaxing his arm muscles. It's a good thing that Chali wasn't around. She felt like she couldn't tell a convincing lie if she did. The slayer swirled his pistol around as he processed her information in his head. So why are you here? You have to be here for a reason, the slayer asked with more emotion, which told Juno that he was being pacified. She shouldn't have a problem telling the truth. She was out doing a normal task. My group is out here looking for calicochum roses. My friend got burnt from the fires, and we would like to help her. Juno explained, while she avoided antagonizing him, which seemed to work. The slayer bent his elbow with the dueling pistol, seeming to be affected by her mention of fire. That's rough. May I ask what species she is? Calicochum roses can be poisonous to certain sentients. The slayer sympathizes with her, yet his wording seems off. There was no mention in her studies that calicochum was poisonous to a certain species. She realized that the slayer was gauging her intelligence, not directly though. He wanted to know if she was helping a Lyconian. She almost told the truth, but chose not to. She's Vulpes and bedridden with terrible burns. Juno told a half-truth, hoping that the slayer would trust her. He stood in place for a while, seeming to doubt her words. Juno almost cracked, but the slayer swirled his pistol back into its holster. It remained lit, ready to use if need be. Yeah, that won't work on her. Say I have a proposal for you, if you would hear me. The slayer changed his voice, having a softer pitch over his growl. Like Juno thought before, calicochum roses don't discriminate against races, so he might just want to have leverage over her. She's only alive for playing the part, and if she acts out of hostility, well, she wasn't going to gamble. She nods at the slayer, who nodded consecutively while he loosened his stance, slinging over his survival backpack. He loosens the tie above, revealing an assortment of items and gear that whets Juno's curiosity. He had backup weapons like a blade and extra pistol balls in a clear container, slipped in sewn-in straps. He pushes some pressurized gourds, which she could assume were filled with toxic chemicals. They all look the same to her. After a couple of items later, Juno flicked her ears with amazement as she saw a red cross on a bag of superior quality. "Is that what I think it is?" Juno said out loud, seeming to have a brief chuckle from the slayer, which surprised her. He pulls the bag out, lighter than feathers and durable like a tough hide. These were normal qualities for otherworlder items, worth their weight in gold. Some say that these bags have items that could save someone from death when a soothsayer church wasn't around. Julie doesn't seem to be reaching death's door, but this bag could speed up her recovery time. Found this in a cave that had a couple of minor basilisks calling it home. Sad to say, this was acquired next to a pile of bones and torn clothing. The slayer explained as he zips open the bag to reveal its contents, placing it on the floor. It was a sad fate for an otherworlder, but if these lands were unkind to its inhabitants, then it wouldn't show mercy. The contents were never touched, neatly organized with the seals on the bottles still intact. The previous owner died before he could use his own item, but that would mean that it was still full of every item. The slayer points to a tube with ineligible markings, yet the color of yellow, a paper box with little pills, and a tube with a yellow ointment. Use 1 pill from this box with a slashed arrow in the mouth a day, and apply a small coat of the yellow tube on the burn mark. If you get a bad reaction, use this yellow ointment instead. Bandage with clean clothes and reapply every day. The slayer instructed while he pointed at every piece of medical equipment. He explained well enough for not knowing what these items were, understanding well enough to see antibiotics. Juno didn't know how they worked, but the Institute taught her their appearance at use. Now for my request. The slayer zips the bag back up and stashes it back into the bottom of his backpack. Juno worried about what he would ask of her. This bag was worth gold, so a small offering was out of the question. Would he ask for the finest sword money could buy, platinum armor only nobles could afford? He stood up as he tilted his head to see her eyes, telling her what he required. 6 pounds of flour from the local settlements by tomorrow. Even if they charge you for being a half-born, sounds like a good deal, yeah. The slayer crosses his arms with a mind-blowing offer, leaving Juno speechless. Just the items listed, right? Juno assumed that that's all he was willing to give. Everything in this bag. The slayer confirms, which made Juno cough from this insane man's deal. She saw more than was listed: pure alcohol and wipes, syrups, and other medicines lining its pockets. Only a stupid sentient would hand this item over for a small fee of flour. No way, this isn't some setup. This bag is worth gold. Juno couldn't help but voice her criticism. He was better off selling this item on his own for a measly barter. The slayer shook his head slowly as he rubbed his neck from a bit of shame. How could this be worth gold when the residents of the land burn for my death? An extra bit of gold over 100 would stroke anybody's greed. The slayer pointed out, telling Juno that he already knows about the bounty on him. His words stayed true to her. Why would she think that anybody would try with a slayer, a human. Why would you trust me when you know the bounty? Juno asks as the slayer passes by her. He reaches down for a candle lamp and uses his dueling pistol to light it. His armor was fully visible, looking worn and covered in dry blood and grime. He turns to Juno with his lantern slowly, revealing that his body aches with fatigue. At this point, the only option is death and bloodshed. I have people getting picked off and starving every passing day. You look like you don't belong here, like you lived in lands with actual law and order. You don't look like a person that would sell someone off. Your eyes have too much hope. The slayer told the confused Juno, who was surprised how human the slayer was. She thought back to the gourmet camp, seeing two females hanging on a board with their necks slit. She noticed in the treasure room that there were swords and armor under all that cloth. She remembers the fires too. If he didn't start them, he wouldn't have the bounty. Why did you start the fire? That's the only reason that money hangs on your head. She was getting frustrated. Tales of Slayers said that they were monsters to beastkin. She's trying to look at his bad side like her group did. It would be better if he was just a heartless arsonist and murderer. The idea did pass her mind to go back and tell the others that she had found a rogue, pocketing the money and his items. That was supposed to be the good ending. Did that make her worse than the slayer? That thought really infuriated her. The world demands my head for just a small fire I started out of desperation, when they were comfortable in a gourmet camp not far from their borders. Killing innocents for coins, ending tales that wanted to continue. The slayer said as he looked into her eyes, which made Juno flip a switch within herself. He had familiar eyes he had seen and done evil, but he had his eyes that showed a broader picture. He had hoped to do better, like she was seeing a version of herself that was tired and broken. She remembers that day. It is ingrained in her soul. The senseless killing by other hands, trying to search for a vulpes under the rock and brimstone. The stacks of boxes filled with salt and body parts, the beautiful pelts that now disgusted her. Riggs's screams echoed through the halls as he was silent from the crunching of bones. Yet what truly disturbed her was an awful thought. Why was the dungeon made of stone? Once the trees grow, the land won't look any different, but that cellar will still be there, with or without the buildings. She couldn't control her emotions, biting her lip while a single strained tear slid down her cheek. Follow me, the exit is this way. The slayer turned his gaze as she stood there, turning his back to her yet waiting. She was being charmed by words again. She knew better to trust those in the triangle. Yet she couldn't help herself. She wanted to help this man in his state of struggle. She flicked her ears and followed the slayer in silence. Equals. Hey, Lynn, I found her, Ramai screamed from the hilltop, while Lynn ran up with a nervous sweat. Juno was picking calicochum flowers in her satchel, flicking her ears and waving at the two. The both of them smiled and waved back, jogging to her with a modest speed. Juno had just finished her gathering, slapping her thighs from the pollen. "Found enough?" Lynn asked as she saw her satchel hardly with content. Juno nods, opening her satchel to reveal a vague glimmer from the shadow. Ramai claps her hands slowly, taking a knee like she just met royalty. Juno chuckled while she looked behind them, wondering how the encounter went. "So how did it go on your girl's end?" Juno asked out of curiosity, and Lynn only waved her hand in dismissal. "Just a party of fellas saying that they got a sniff of the Slayer around here, and to be careful. Nothing we should worry about," Lynn said as she puffed her chest in triumph, proud that she handled the situation with diplomacy. Juno was screaming internally, trying to continue the conversation without alarming the others. "Really? Well, we should be very careful," Juno said without a hint of emotion, only flicking her left ear out of habit. Lynn focused on her ear, which had her confused by the little action. Ramai was none the wiser, celebrating with a cheer that changed Lynn's attention. The group cheers as they head back to mellow ground, with Juno giving the large tree one last glare. Equals. "Ah, what a nice hick day to be drinking this stuff by the hick barrel," Ramai rambles as she chugs another beer stein filled with moonberry wine. Lynn was also a little pickled by the devil's drink, giving a very nasally and unladylike laugh, especially when the barkeep is so nimble and Juno is filling the tab. Lynn said in a toast, eyeing the barkeep, who was doing tricks with other customers' drinks. He spun the mixing cup in the air and let the juices flow while he held a couple of cups sideways. Juno was just indulging in her plate of stir-fried veggies with a cup of water and a glass of wine. Lynn leans over with one bug eye staring at Juno, smelling like ripe berries. "You took that room real quick when the innkeeper hung it on the board. What? Did you get sick of cuddling with me, moi?" Lynn said as she slapped her breast when she was complaining. Juno shook her head to tell her that wasn't the reason. She came up with the idea to get Ramai extra drunk while they got a room together, saying that it was too crowded in Lynn's suite. She would say that Lynn should stay with Chali because they are closer to one another, while she could sneak out when the group let the wine sleep. "I was just thinking that a quartet didn't fit a duo if Ramai is going to be around. You two should have your own room while Calicocum does its work." What Juno said wasn't a lie, yet she hid an ulterior motive behind her words. Lynn rubs her chin in jest, then starts to slam more moonberry wine with her spiced tofu. Juno saw that Ramai had 7 swigs, while Lynn was on 4. The right amount she could guesstimate was their sober limit. "You girls enjoy yourselves. I like to explore some shops before heading to bed." Juno finished her plate and pushed 3 silvers towards the 2 drunk women. Ramai hollers like an animal, while Lynn, against her better judgment, slides the coins towards the barkeep. She did backtrack to Juno, scratching her ears with a bit of worry. "Looking is fine and all, but if you go out alone, those shops keep about charging you extra, you know from your smell," Lynn said meaning that it was obvious that she was a half-born, not that she reeked. Well, it had been a couple of days since her last bath, but she avoided anything too nasty. She waves at Lynn to tell her that it was fine, which only had her shrug, and she indulges herself. Before she went out, she slid the room key into Ramai's pocket, knowing that the half-born Panrius was going to be there for a while. Equals. Thanks for the business. If your master complains about the extra silver, then tell her she should buy her own flour, the crude shopkeeper said as he slapped Juno's rear out of his shop. She stares at him with daggers as he wipes his hand on a dirty rag like she had a disease. The bastard was already charging her double the price the flour was worth, the tab having a bit of copper owed. She only had silver, so the shopkeeper just took the second coin as a service fee. It didn't matter that much. She was going to get her money's worth when she headed down to the pond. She could wait in the dead of night as the others slept, trailing the path back under the moonlight. Monsters hunt during those times, but with the female calicochum powder, she could be a little risky. It wasn't just for the first aid kit. Lives needed this food to survive. She couldn't risk Lynn or Ramai following her or getting suspicious. So 2 hours after the moon lines up should be enough. She would have to speak the truth when she came back, but after that, she would have a valuable item in her bag. This is for Chali's well-being. She will pay her back for protecting her in that alley. Equals. Juno opens the door while Ramai snores from the overconsumption of wine. She was out cold, so Juno just lugged her bag of flour next to the door. She closes the room next to Lynn's. The Centelope couple from a couple of nights ago checked out today, being a convenience to her. She walked to the other door and gave it a knock, wondering if anyone was awake, because the moon had only appeared a moment ago. "Is that you, Juno?" Chali asked, which had Juno flick her ears. "Yeah, can I come in?" Juno asked as she straightened her back with her arms behind her. "The door's open," Chali announced, which prompted Juno to open the door. All she heard was Lynn's sweet snores and the flipping of pages as she saw Chali closing a book while she gave her attention. "How is it?" Juno asks as she sees the book she lent Chali. Even when drunk, Lynn could operate as if nothing had happened. She crushed the roses into a cream and coated it on my wound, then wrapped some cloth over it. Chali got the wrong idea, which made Juno tilt her head with a blush. Chali noticed and realized that she meant the book, which she sighs as she opens it up. "Got to say it's still pervy, but I can't stop reading the pages." Chali smiled while she looked at the sleeping Lynn with warm eyes. "You two have some history?" Juno asked, which made Chali's ears flick. Chali became a bit bashful, but nodded warmly as she tried to wag her tail when she sat on it. "She was the one that found me under a wagon when I was a pup. The first friendly face I saw right after I broke out of the cages of human slavers." Chali reminisced, telling a summary of her distant past to Juno. She wondered if the slayer had anything to do with her traumatic past, which didn't add up from his age. Even under the mask, she could see that the hunter wasn't any older than Lynn, seeming to have lived for 2 decades. Did the slayer set you up with human slavers? Juno wanted to know, still trying to see if she should go through with the hunter's proposal. Chali looked at Juno with a bit of suspicion, seeming to wonder what was with all these questions. She shakes her head, leaning forward as she tells it a bit. Not the 100-coin one. He was only a kid the first time I saw him, with his blank mask. Chali told her with a bit of rage building. So she did know about the bounty. More than likely Lynn told her in a drunken ramble. Juno knew that there was more to the story and intently listened. The serpent slayer has a master huntsman, one that passes down his tricks to a new generation. His name was Gryphoniator, having armor decorated with the tough feathers of a griffin. I was a pup under a Lyconian raider faction, one that doesn't get mentioned anymore. I don't even remember the name. Mother was a consolation prize to the Pack Alpha, ripped from her home and given as a gift. After the fact, I was born with a pairing of lust. My father didn't give a rat's ass about me or my mother. Mother was weak, picked by the current wives of the Alpha, who taught their kids with me. Fuck those whores and their horse and S. But that's not the important part. Pops bit off more than he could chew, pillaging and raping near human borders. The Gryphoniator gave my dad what he deserved, but my mother was also killed, begging for her life and mine. She didn't do anything wrong. She loved me even though I was that bastard daughter. She could have run away when the raid started, but she had to make sure that I lived. He gutted her as I watched, while he taught his protege how to stab and gut. He found it funny to leave me with some slavers, only selling me for 10 pieces of copper. Chali finished her story, irritated when she remembered that the biggest insult was the coppers. Juno didn't know how to react. She wasn't expecting her to tell the whole story. Even if Juno didn't think that the serpent slayer was at fault, the mere fact that he was a participant was enough for Chali. Those gold coins are mine, and when I pin that slayer down, ripping his guts as he did to my mother, his last words are going to be the location of the Gryphoniator, even if he's an old man shitting in his drawers. Chali declared, unnerving Juno from the descriptive fantasy. When I'm done, I can only ask that you take care of Lynn for me. Can I trust you, Juno? Chali turns her body and lies down, digging herself deeper into the sheets. This is a hard situation to navigate. It sounds like Chali is expecting to die at the end of this journey, yet she snarls at her pain, producing a noticeable cold sweat from her temple. She's hiding a fever. It would seem she hides many things well. Yet Juno didn't want that outcome. She was determined to find an outcome where they were all drinking ale and singing by the fire. It was strange, but she also pictured the slayer telling tales down by the fire. Even if it was fantasy, at least the slayer could go back to his homeland in one piece. She would protect the ones she grew to care about, but she would avoid bloodshed if she could. Was it madness? Yes, but it was a better outcome than burning bodies. I'll try to keep everyone safe. Good night, Chali. Juno said with confidence. Even if it's misplaced, she would hold on to it. Chali smiled as she yawned, her body telling her that she needed rest. Good answers, good night, little white knight. Night.